All right. So this is the first tutorial. In this one, I will show how to create a player and a recorder for the transforms of an object. As you can see in this example, I have several meshes, arrows that are being controlled by the vibe controller. See, you can bend over, stretch, move the arms to the sides, can punch, and everything was recorded to disk. And I'm not using cinematic sequence recorder because I wanted to access the data from a blueprint. I don't know if it's possible with sequence recorder. Or so this is a project I was working on because I wanted to control the character that is on the left side. This one. So I figured it would be easier for testing to record all the data once and use it to test to control the bounds of my character. So in this tutorial, we are only going to see how to create the recorder and the player for one static mesh that is moved. I'm not showing how to connect to Vibe or anything else. So first, we create a new project. Okay, so the way this works is we have to create a, a save game object which saves data to the disk. We will be using a blueprint to have some components and record the transforms of that of those components. So let's create the objects. And maybe just move the content browser here. Okay. So we need a save game object. Use this one. Let's call it recording. And here we create a variable of type transform, and it's going to be an array. This array we call one transform per frame. So let's say and let's create our recorder. We'll use an actor. Let's put it here in the viewport. Now let's create an object, a mesh, maybe this cube with a static material. Now let me see my previous projects. So let's check the BP recorder. Um, Here it is, sensor recorder. Um, let me explain. On begin play, we do nothing. I have two custom methods: one for recording, one to end the recording, to finish the recording. And when we execute the custom method record, it will try to it will get an instance of the save game object that we just created. We'll put it in a variable. We'll also set the recording variable to true and print that we are already recording. After that, what it will go and do, every tick, it will check if we are recording and it's true. It will access the data that we place it on the save game object, and we fill it with the transforms of my components. As you can see, arrow sensor is this component, which is this mesh. It's basically an arrow. So let's do that. So custom method record. You also need the recording variable. Set false. We need the slot name is like a sub variable inside the save game object. So let's create one. Let's call it dot name. And set it to slot one, maybe. It doesn't matter. You just have to be consistent that this data is the same when we replay the data on the player that we're going to create next. So this, now let's save this reference. And first let's cast it. Save game recording. So this guy, like this guy. Now put it on a variable, which is a game object recording instance. And say we are recording now. So now let's go and set our tick. So each tick will check if we are recording. So if true, we will return save game instance and get the data variable that exists inside it, and add a new transform each tick that we're recording. So if you read it, it will be we are on a new tick, and if we are recording, then add a new transform inside our array data. So which array, which transform we want to save? We want to use the transform of this cube. So let's get the transform, get word transform. Maybe it's better to save the relative transform, which is transform like this guy. So like this, we already have logic to save each tick or transform of this object or cube. Now let's create the custom method to finish the recording. This will immediately stop the recording since the tick will no longer enter this part. So with this, I think is enough. Let's check my previous project. And so it stops the recording and saves the data on that slot, save can slot. Let me just copy. So here, again, let's use our instance. Let's already save it. And let's use the same slot that we read at the first instance. So that's it. Check if I'm forgetting something. No? Let's also copy this. It didn't like it, so print string form. There it is. Now, this object never moves, so we want it to move, so we have different values in our transform. So let's just force it to do it manually. Maybe you want this cube to be controlled by the motion controller from your Vibe VR. Maybe it's the headset itself. You can record the rotation of the headset, the translation, the location, and or maybe you want to capture another object like a ball, something controlled by physics. I don't know. You can use it. You can use this logic to record any data. So I will just create a timeline. At the start, It will loop. It will move in three values. The first one is value 0 at time 0. Second will be, well, the third will be at 5 seconds, value 0. And the middle one will be at time 2.5 seconds at value 1. So basically a zigzag, right? So close it and use that value to control the location of this guy. This will be a 0 to 1 range, so I want to multiply it by 600. Let's make it 1000. And we are still not calling these guys anywhere. So how about if I use a key to call it? Here. And let's say this one is pressed, we start record. And when we release it, finish recording. So we already have, in theory, the recording of one transform of one object. So our cube. Let me test. Oof. It was too much, the data. 1000 it was too much to multiply it. Alright, so 500. Alright. I didn't like the material. I just duplicate this to have more light. I guess it's a little bit. So let's make the recording. Play. It's moving. Now I will press the R key. Nothing happens because I forgot to do another input. And I want this guy to tell me that it's recording. Well, here we will get the message that is recording when the custom method is executed. So just tell this blueprint to receive the input of player 0. Alright, so it's moving, and oh, so it's not executing the recording. So basically, we don't do this, we don't do this. We do create, save game object. Sorry about that. Let's find out our save game recording, which is going to be in this variable. So now it is, and it should work. So I will start recording now. I'm still pressing, and now I'm releasing now. So in theory, I have already all that data on my save game object that we can validate if we go to our project files, save it, save games. As you can see, we save it as slot 1, as we name it the slots in here, this guy. So we have a file of 237 kilobytes, which means we have that in there. So it's going good. Now we need a way to replay this data. So let's create the player. I want to create blueprint, a new actor, VP player. And it's going to be very similar to a recorder, but it's going to play. Let's create a new object. Let's this time a sphere. Maybe like this. I don't know what this material is. The first thing I want to do is to load the save game object. So we got, let's say, load save. Okay, from a slot. Save game record slot. Name. Let's call it the same way as we did on the recorder. This is going to happen when we start, when this blueprint starts. So now we do cast. So cast to recording. And this time I want to know that something is wrong. So let's put a print string. So game object did not load. Well, if it does, I want to save this in a variable. And I guess that's it. And each tick, I want to read the array, but the thing is that our array has a certain number of elements, and we want maybe to loop it every time. So we have a continuous movement that never ends. So we have to create a logic that loops through the array all the time. So it's easy. We just create a variable that will be our index. So index int. Let's put here a sequence. Let's say this to increment each tick, but in case this integer is at any time bigger than the data, we want it to reset to 0. So set to 0. I will place a condition later. So let's get our instance of our game shape objects, read the data, this is an array of transforms, so we read our current index on the array, and we use that transform and apply it to our sphere. Remember, we save it as relative transform, so we apply it as relative transform too. So like this. And now that I know we have this array, we can get the length and say if our index is at any time bigger or equal as this length, we reset to 0. Oh, this guy. So if index is bigger or equal than this length, and that's it. We have a recording. So we can even delete the recording blueprint, as you can see here, because it's the data is already saved on disk. So that data is recorded. So that's the way I did it with the VR controller. So basically what I did, if you want to know, I don't have the VR connected, but basically the object that you are going to record, this guy, my cube, instead of control it with a timeline, I just set the motion controller, put the cube as a child, and set the motion controller to be one of my trackers, or maybe the follow the headset. As you can see in here, I can set up the left hand, or maybe another motion controller from any other VR. So basically that's it. That's how I control it. A bunch of objects with the motion controllers, one per each of the controllers. So, and then I added that logic on the recording in here. In here, instead of just recording one, I record multiple uh, meshes that are controlled by by individual controllers. As you can see in my original project, you can see here in the recorder, I have motion controller 1, motion controller 2, and so on, and one arrow mesh arrow as an child of each of them. And each tick, instead of just adding one transform to my data, I I created multiple data arrays on the same object and added the new transform per each controller, if that makes any sense. If you can see in here, this guy has multiple arrays instead of one per each controller, and I add on each of them using the same game object, and I add each frame a transform to each of those arrays. So that's it. If you want to see it again, I just created some logic to on the player that it reads each of the arrays and control each of these green arrows. It also kind of loops, and also I added this scroller to, to control the position. So basically what I'm controlling here is the index for reading the arrays. So you can move it, maybe send it to the end, and it will loop when it finishes. It will set the index to 0 and again and again. So that's it. It's kind of useful to create your own mockup capture system